Mosquito is a really interesting plane built by the British during World War II, right in the middle of it, and it's one of the more famous planes on the list. But that doesn't make it like not insane. It's actually really cool. Um, the main thing about it is the fact that this is a two-engine bomber that is made entirely out of wood, and initially was completely unarmed, no weapons on it, just bombs. The idea behind it was to create an incredibly fast and agile bomber that would be able to basically come screaming in, drop its payload, and go screaming out to the point where air defenses couldn't catch it, fighters couldn't get it, speed up to its speed and go shoot it down. It'd just basically be unbelievably fast, blisteringly fast, and hard to nail down, hence the name Mosquito. The really interesting thing about it is it's made out of balsa wood surrounded by birch wood, and the majority of it is built with plywood, which is sort of ridiculous for a plane at this time because this was a new plane designed with a wooden construction in mind. This wasn't like we're short on materials, let's build this wooden plane like, Russian aircraft, because those were supposed to be made out of aluminum, and then they made them out of wood because they had a shortage of materials. This one was designed to be built out of wood. So it was the fastest plane in the entire world when it was initially built, exceeding speeds of over 400 miles an hour, which is why it was so quick. And even in the later years of the war, it still remained one of the fastest planes available to like the Allied powers. A million different variants were made of it. One that I personally saw at the Military Aviation Museum in Virginia Beach was the fighter variant, which had 4 cannons and 4 machine guns worked into the nose, and it was used as an interceptor to go take out German bombers or fighters that were trying to, fly around Europe. But it was used as a bomber primarily. One of the other things that was cool about it was also used as a pathfinder for night raids with the British Lancaster bombers, as these would come flying in at night, would drop flares out from underneath it. They would illuminate targets, and then, of course, these lumbering Lancasters would come flying over and drop their payloads of incendiary bombs, and they would use the Mosquito's flares in order to track where they were supposed to drop their bombs, where their targets were. In addition to its speed, the bomber itself was unarmed, which was sort of unheard of at the time, considering that the main bombers, which were, Lancasters, B-17s, B-25s, B-26s, all were incredibly large, incredibly heavy, all aluminum aircraft that had tons of guns. Like, literally the whole body was sort of lined with them. Like the B-17 had one in the tail and like 2 in the waist, and then like a ball turret on the bottom, and like a couple in the front, and it was just an obscene amount of weapons on them. But the Mosquito, of course, is this light, little, fast, quick, unarmed thing, and it actually set a precedent for every single bomber built afterwards. They sort of stopped putting these gun turrets on them sort of after the Mosquito. The B-29 initially had radio-controlled ones, but they started to phase them out within the later variants of them because, you're flying at such a high altitude and you want to be faster and everything, and the added weight of the guns means that you have to cut your payload in half. So essentially, by working out the weapons of the plane, you get a faster airplane that's lighter, but you also can have a much larger payload. And stuff like the F-117 Nighthawk don't have guns in them because you don't need guns in them. If they're fast enough or stealthy enough, you don't need to incorporate weapons. And the Mosquito really started that trend of phasing out weaponry in bomber aircraft. And that's one of the reasons why it's so fascinating.